I don't know about you, but maybe you're feeling a little bit tired. Is anybody feeling a little bit tired around this time of year? It's dark, it's cold. Finals are coming up. Maybe you have finals this week, next week, and it's just that time of year where you're really, really tired. And when you're tired, how many of you know it's very easy to be lazy? And I don't know what the laziest thing you've done recently, but I know often I'm ashamed at sometimes how lazy that I can be. And I was looking up some lazy things that people did, and I found an article, and it was titled, like, the laziest things people have said that they've ever done or recently done. And so I'm going to read some for you. And maybe, hopefully not, this isn't you, but as I was reading these, I felt they were a little bit too relatable, hit a little bit too close to home. And so hopefully when I read them, it's your neighbor that you're worried about, not yourself. But here we go. What's the laziest thing you've ever done or recently done? Number 1, it says, my light is in the opposite end of the room. And sometimes I call my brother in and ask him a random question, and then when he leaves, I say, can you turn on my light? As if it was an afterthought. So I don't know if you're guilty with your roommate. Maybe you do that. Once I skipped an entire day of classes because there wasn't enough milk to fill the cereal bowl in the morning, and I lost all my motivation, just went straight back to bed for the whole day. Maybe that's you. I know when Mac doesn't get her Cheerios, it is a bad day. So that one hits close to home for her. Number 3, it says, I used to live directly across the street from a pizza place. I think you know where this is going. At a crosswalk, I would still order delivery rather than just walk across the crosswalk. The guy wouldn't even get in his car most of the times. I could just watch him across the street from my living room. Pretty lazy. All right, a few more. The other day, I was laying in bed, and my Roku remote was on my desk, literally 5 feet away. Rather than stand up and get it, I grabbed my phone, downloaded the Roku app, and used my phone to stop the movie on the screen. Wow! Just keep getting worse. All right, this one hit close to home. If I find a Tupperware with moldy food in it, I just throw the whole Tupperware away rather than cleaning it. Oh, man, how much Tupperware? You're like, I got that from my aunt and uncle. I didn't even pay for it. I'm just throwing that away. Man, this last one, man, the day I moved into my apartment, I was so exhausted, so I just put the box spring and the mattress on the floor and laid my bed frame in the corner to assemble it the next day. It's been 2 years, and my bed frame is still in the corner of my room. Man, hopefully that's not you. Hopefully that story wasn't about you. But I know it can be easy when we're tired to be lazy. And I know for me, I've been feeling a little bit tired recently, and I become victims of my laziness. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to get out of bed at this time. And then you just hit your alarm 3 more times, and all of a sudden it's like 10 o'clock, and you're like, well, just slept through my first 2 classes. What do I do now? I'm not in classes. I'm you in that story. I don't sleep till 10 o'clock ever. Come on. Saturday I did, but anyways. But maybe you're tired. Maybe you're lazy. Maybe you're even feeling exhausted, and you come into church and you say, I just need a little bit of Jesus. I need Jesus to come into my life and fill me up because I'm exhausted. What does Jesus say about being exhausted? Well, I'm going to tell you. Glad you asked. In Matthew chapter 11, we're going to have it on the screen, so I was going to say open your Bibles, but I just felt like you guys would look at me like, what? Open my Bibles. Open your YouVersion app. Or look on the screen and read with me Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30. Jesus says, come to me, all who are exhausted and weighted down beneath your burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. There's so much in that verse. It's maybe a verse that you've heard before if you grew up in church, or for the people who didn't grow up in church, you always hear them say, if you grew up in church, you're like, I'm not that person, so stop saying that. But if you grew up in church, you probably heard my yoke. You're like, what the heck is a yoke? We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Not an egg yolk, that's not what it is. But Jesus says, I will give you rest. And you're thinking, finally, I'm tired. And the reason I'm tired is because I haven't been able to rest, because I'm so busy, because I'm overworked and all of this. And what I love about Jesus is the first thing he says in this passage is he says, come to me. And Jesus is the God of come to me. He says, if you're weighed down, if you have all these burdens, if you have so many things that are bad in your life, Jesus doesn't first say, you know what, you need to go fix it. You need to go figure it out. If you can't get up 5 feet to go grab your Roku TV remote, then get out of here. You're not going to come and hang out with the king of the universe. Jesus first says, you know what? I don't care what you did. I don't care how lazy you are. I don't care what your mess is. I want you to come to me. Come to me first, and then let's figure everything else out. And that's the God that we serve. We serve a God who says, come to me. Come to me in the middle of your worst moments. Come to me even when you're tired, especially when you're tired. Because if you come to me, then I'm going to give you rest. And when Jesus says, I'll give you rest, the word that he's using there is a word that actually means I'm going to give you the ability to stop what you're doing. And so maybe you're here and maybe you feel like you have so much going on. You're so stressed. You have finals and you have these friendships and relationships you need to manage, and you have family that you're figuring out around the holidays and trying to work through, and you're stressed with your job because you're trying to work in school, and then you're stressed because you're getting into debt, and you're like, oh my gosh, like it's going the wrong way, and you're like, how am I gonna do this? And then maybe you went through a tough relationship thing, or you're dealing with all these things, and our generation can be so stressed about everything because then we see on social media how everyone else is not stressed and they're doing so amazing and their life is perfect, and I'm here, I can't even get a good grade in the easiest class that I have, and I can't even get up 5 feet, and I'm throwing Tupperware away, and it's just the worst thing ever. It's so easy to be holding on to everything and to say, God, give me rest. Give me rest. And Jesus is saying, well, first, in order for you to receive rest, you need to put down what you're doing. Because it's impossible for you to rest if you don't first put down the things that you're doing. If you're trying to, I don't know if you've ever fallen asleep while you're texting. Have you ever done that and the phone falls on your face and it hits you in the face and you wake up? It's hard to rest that way. I don't know, maybe just me. It's confession time, I guess. Jeez, you guys are perfect. Sorry. But I don't know if you've been awake all night because you're thinking about something. Maybe somebody said something to you and you're thinking, man, what did they mean by that? Maybe you've been going through a tough time and something's keeping you up at night, or it's a project that you think you did well on, but you're trying to wonder what grade you got, or maybe it's a job offer that you're waiting for and it's just keeping you up at night over and over again and you just can't sleep. And God's saying you got to first stop thinking about that. You got to first put down the things that you're doing in order to receive rest. And Jesus is there. And there's a story, I'm not going to read it. We don't have time to go into all the different stories, but there's a story of Mary and Martha. And, Martha, she's working really, really hard. And she's saying, Jesus, why don't you see what I'm doing for you? And Mary's in the room and with Jesus, just hanging out with him. And she's saying, Mary's just chilling with you. Why don't you just focus on me? Look I'm doing the good things. I'm serving you. And he says, you know what she's doing is better. Because she's just spending time with me. She's not worried about making food. She's not worried about the preparations. She's not worried about the things that need to get done. She's actually experiencing true rest. And I'm not here to tell you that you need to just not show up to your finals and email your professor and say, I was at church on Monday, and Pastor Logan, he told me that in order for me to receive rest, I needed to set down what I'm working on. And that project that I was working on was just stressing me out. And I had to put it down, and so it's kind of like a doctor's note. It's like a pastor's note. Like Jesus said to rest, and after all, the word in the original language means to set it down. So that's what I'm doing, and your professor's going to say, yeah, no. So that's not what I'm telling you to do. But I do think it's important for us to recognize that maybe there's things that we're holding on to that we're trying so hard to work on that Jesus is saying, why don't you just set it down for a moment? You can always pick it back up. He's not asking us to throw it on the ground and smash it. He's not asking us to put our purpose and our plans behind us. He's not asking us to lose focus. All he's saying is, I need you to shift your focus for a second on me because I want to give you rest, and that's what you need right now. And then once you're well rested, how many of you know, you're really angry when you're super tired? And somebody says something to you like, hey, nice shirt. You're like, shut up! And he's like, I just said nice shirt. And you're like, yeah, but it was sarcastic. You're like, where was the sarcasm in my tone? Stop it. It's like, okay, sorry. Sorry? Yeah, you're sorry? Yeah, you should be sorry. And it's like, you're just tired and you're hungry and you need some more cookies. Or you had too many cookies. But I think we can become victims of it a lot. We're too tired, and God's just saying, you need to just get some rest. You need to just sit down, you need to relax, and you need to put down what you're doing that's stressing you out. You need to receive rest. And, he goes on in Matthew 11. He talks about rest, but then he talks about this yoke. And I said that we would get into this. In verse 29 and 30, he says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." And I think you're asking, what the heck is a yoke? Like, what on earth is Jesus talking about? I'm going to tell you. I'll give you a lesson. It's free. So a yoke in the Bible times was something that they would put on animals. I actually have the official definition just so I don't screw it up. Because, I'm human. Sometimes if I just pause long enough, you guys just start laughing. So that's my strategy. If ever I'm just not sure what to say, I'll just pause a little bit too long, and then you guys will laugh, give me enough to think about what I'm going to say next. So yoke is a harness used on an ox or an animal to ease the work of hauling a load. So a yoke is something that they put, it's basically, if you think of those things, this is like a weird analogy, but they would use it, but like, those things that you see in like slave things where they have like the bars over them, like the big wooden block over the back, and it's like that, and it's like, wow, that's a bad analogy, but it's like a big wooden thing, and these animals were kind of slaves to them, but they're animals, and I don't know what I'm saying, but it's a piece of wood that goes over an ox, and it's meant to fit to make their burden lighter. And basically, they're pulling things. The ox are plowing, and the animals are plowing because obviously if you're going back and forth, they didn't have like combines or tractors or all these different things to do the work for them. They would have animals, they would have oxes, they would have donkeys, they would have different things that would go. And they would put these yokes on the back of them so that they could walk and do the job easier. Rather than pulling something, it was basically like a harness for them to pull it along easier so that the animals wouldn't get as tired out. And so what does Jesus say? He says, my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. They're saying, that's great for you, Jesus. Like, my burden is heavy, and I don't even know if I got a yoke. I'm just pulling something behind me. I'm stuck in the ground. Like, God, can I get one of those things? And why is yours so light? Why is mine so heavy? But it's really that we're misunderstanding what Jesus is saying. When Jesus says, my yoke is light, he's actually referring to the yoke that he's giving each and every one of us. And you see, Jesus actually understood yokes pretty well. After all, he was a carpenter. And I think sometimes we forget that Jesus was a carpenter. We remember that he was Jesus. He did miracles. He did all these amazing things. And Jesus was a carpenter for the 30 years of his life. He learned from his dad, who was a carpenter as well. So he learned this trade of carpentry. And as you know, yoke is made of wood now. You know that. You get a degree for that. And oftentimes, carpenters in this time or this era and part of the world would be making these. So Jesus actually probably had a pretty good idea of what a yoke was and how it was meant to be made. But what was important about yokes was that they would actually make them to the specifications of the animal. Because after all, a yoke that's built for an ox is not going to work very well for a small donkey. It's not going to work very well for a horse. And so they actually would make them and tailor them and fit them custom made for their animals. And they would make one that's around the same size, but then they would shape it, they would measure it, they would make sure it fits perfectly. Because if it fits perfectly, then it's going to be easiest for the animal. It's going to cause the least amount of friction. It's not going to go back and forth. It's going to stay on snug. And so what Jesus is saying to all the people listening, to us listening here 2,000 years later, is he's saying, the yoke that I have built for you, the burden that I have put on your life to carry. Another way to put it would maybe be call. Maybe you've heard that before. God, what is my calling? What is my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing with my life? And Jesus is using this analogy of a yoke, but really what he's saying to every single one of us is he's saying, the purpose that I have for you is easy. The purpose that I have for you is light. And so many of us are carrying somebody else's burden or carrying somebody else's purpose. And it was meant for a donkey, and we're an ox, and we're there saying, why doesn't this fit me? Why is this so heavy? Why is this so light? Why doesn't this fit right? And God's saying, because you don't have my yoke. You don't have my plan for your life. You're following somebody else's. You're comparing. You're looking to your left and to your right. You're trying to focus on what everyone else is doing. But God says, what I have given you is easy. What I have given you is light because I created you for it. I've given you all these giftings. And if you try and use something different, if you try and be used in the wrong way, you're out there plowing the fields, but I meant for you to be in the gardens and you're confused as to why it's not working out. If I thought I was supposed to be on the football team, it would not be good. It's the reality. You got to know where you're gifted. And God's saying, I've given you giftings. I've given you talents. I've given you a place and an opportunity. And all I'm asking is that you would put on the yoke that I've built for you, that I've custom crafted for you, that I made to fit your shoulders just right, that I made so it didn't pinch your back, that I made it so it was perfect to be where you are. And there are seasons of your life where you feel like you're in the flow, seasons of your life where you feel like God is just working and he's moving and you're going. And that's where you have it on right. That's where Jesus says you're right in the plan that I have for you. Your burden is light because you're like, there's no friction in the way. It's perfectly fit. And there's other seasons of our life, and maybe you're in it right now, where you feel like you can't even put it on straight. You can't even get anything right. You're clunky. You're going all around and just isn't working. And another time where we see in the Bible where they use the word yoke, it's actually one of the more famous passages where it's yoke, is 2 Corinthians 6. And Paul's writing, and he says, do not be yoked together with unbelievers. For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness? And in Deuteronomy, it actually talks about you can't put an ox and a donkey on the same yoke. I think a lot of times we become victims to say, you know what, I'm gonna go where they're going. I'm gonna do what they're doing. Or God, this is the call that I think I should have on my life. So I'm just going to attach myself to this person or attach myself to this crowd or attach myself to that leader because after all, they're so great. And if I just follow along with what they're doing, I'm probably going to end up in a right spot. And God's saying, you can't be unequally yoked. You can't go into it because it's not going to fit. It was meant for somebody else. It was somebody else's burden to carry. And you're out there trying to carry a burden that wasn't meant for you. And then you wonder why it's so heavy. And you say, God, I just want to be a leader. God, I just want to be rich. God, I just want to be fill in the blank. And God's saying, I didn't ask for you to have that burden right now, so I don't know why you're trying to lift it, because I actually didn't give you the strength to lift that. I asked you to be in the garden. I didn't ask you to be out there plowing the fields. I didn't ask you to be doing those heavy things because I knew that someday you'd be able to do that. But if you lifted it too much now, I knew that you were going to get hurt, and I knew that that was going to paralyze you for the rest of the season that I was going to have you out there. And God's saying it's not because I don't want to have great things for you. It's not because I don't want you to succeed. It's that I don't want you to be unequally yoked, because after a while, it's going to disrupt. And what's going to happen is you then are going to corrupt the person that is in the right spot. And if you're in the wrong spot, then all of a sudden this person who is following after God's call, if they let you stay a part of them, if they let you be a part of their yoke, then all of a sudden it's going to get unbalanced, it's going to get unhinged, and they're going to be starting to drift, because after all, they knew that an ox and a donkey, if they were on the same yoke, a donkey would actually veer a different direction and try and lead. Even though the ox is heavier and bigger and stronger, they knew that if you put them together, you would lead into a different direction and you'd end up in the completely wrong place. And so when God says, don't be unequally yoked, he's talking about don't align yourself to people who don't believe what you believe. Don't align yourself to people who don't share the same values and morals that you do. Don't align your trajectory of your life with people that you know aren't going the same direction. And then please don't align yourself and put yourself, if you're going to pull other people down, because I have a call on them too, and I don't want you to be that person. I sure don't want other people to do it to you, but don't be that person to other people. And it's a difficult thing to reconcile and realize, but God has created each and every one of us a plan, a purpose, a call, a future on our life. And we have to say, God, I want to be where it fits perfect. I want to be where you have me. And maybe you're feeling empty. Maybe you feel like there's nothing. Maybe you feel like you haven't been able to find that perfect thing. I know when you're in a car and you're on empty, I know yesterday I got into Mac's car and it was empty. And I was like, okay, Mac, we got a rule. And in the wintertime, I don't know if your parents have ever told you this, you got to be at a quarter of a tank. Because in the wintertime, if you break down, then all of a sudden you're stranded and you're in a blizzard, you got to have a quarter of a tank of gas because we don't want you to freeze on the freeway. So you got to have a a tank of gas. But you know what happens when you're empty? Is you can't get very far. And that doesn't sound very profound, but how many of you know when you're empty is always when you need to be somewhere? And you get in the car and you're in a hurry and you're in a rush, and if you're a girl or a guy, you didn't get your hair done yet, and you're like, shoot. You're like, okay, my hair's not ready, and you got to get your makeup on, and you're like, okay, do I have phone, wallet, keys? Phone, wallet, keys. Okay, great. And then it's like, okay, you got your purse, you got everything you need to go, and you're like, okay, I'm trying to make it to the dinner, or I'm trying to make it to class, or I'm trying to make it to wherever I'm going, and then all of a sudden you get in your car and you turn the key and you turn it on and you're empty. And then you're calculating. You go, okay, it says 3 miles range. It's about 4.5 miles. But if I drive a little bit slower, but actually, okay, I need to get there on time. Okay, they give a little bit of buffer in the manufacturer. I bet you in the manual it says there's like a 5-mile buffer. I'm totally fine. And how many of you have ever ran out of gas on the freeway and you're like, 5 minutes ago, it's like a movie where it's like, I'm totally fine. And then it like skips to the scene where you're on the freeway, like trying to get a ride. When we're empty, we can't go very far. And when we're in a hurry, and then all of a sudden God says, hey, this is the plan that I have for your life. And you're saying, oh, yeah, how many miles is that to get there? Okay, well, I know that in my spiritual tank, I know that I got about 6 miles. And you said it's 7? Okay, I can probably scrape by. I can probably get there. Or okay, well, the light is on. Would you mind if I stop for gas real quick on the way? Because, God, I know that I've been asking you for an assignment, and I've been asking you for something to do, and I've been asking you for that friendship to open up, and I've been asking you for all these things. And now that it's here, I'm just not quite ready because, I forgot to fill up, and God, man, this is embarrassing. We can become victims of that. And the reason why we're empty is because we've been focusing on all the other things, and God says, if you just put on the right thing, if you just spent time with me, if you just put down what you were doing, all the things that you were focused on, if you just went to me with rest that I give you, if you went to me and said yes to the call that I placed on your life, had a meter knowing, you know what, I'm not going to let myself get under a quarter of a tank. Because it's winter out there. And there's people out there that are going through super hard things. And I know there's people in my family. And I know there's people, my classmates. I know that I struggle with this. I know that anxiety's out there. I know that depression's out there. I know that fear's out there. I know that all these things are out there. And so I'm not going to let myself get under a quarter of a tank. Because I know that when I get broken down on the freeway, when I'm there, I need some gas to get me through. I need some things to keep me warm. I need a relationship that's going to bring me through it. And if I just go and I break down on the freeway and I got no gas, I'm not going to be able to get anywhere. If I'm in a hurry and God says, you need to do this, I'm not going to be able to say yes to him because I got nothing in the tank. And God's telling each and every one of us, I'm not asking you to push it all the way to the limits to get it to empty. Why don't you just keep yourself full? Why don't you come to me so that I can fill you up? Why don't you experience my presence? Why don't you open up the book that I have words for you? 66 books that I wrote just for you in every season that you're walking through. It's not good when we're empty. The response there is great. When you say it's good, the timing. Timing is everything, guys. Galatians 6, 1 through 5 says this. We can get back on track. Get back on track. Galatians 6, 1 through 5. It says, brothers and sisters, if someone is caught in sin, you who live by the Spirit should restore that person gently. But watch yourselves, or you also may be tempted. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. If anyone thinks they are something when they're not, they deceive themselves. Each one should test their own actions. Then they can take pride in themselves alone without comparing themselves to someone else. For each one should carry their own load. There's a lot there in that verse, but first part of it, Paul's saying, if you see somebody broken down, if you see somebody going through something, it doesn't mean that you have to put on their entire burden. But it says, help them carry in their burden. God's not asking you to put on their life. God's not asking you to put on their purpose or take their call. But God says, when you see someone who's struggling, when you see someone who needs it, why don't you help them? Because after all, if you're broken down, if you're hurting, that's what you need. Do you wish that somebody would say, hey, I see the pain that you're in. I see the problems that you're experiencing with your family, and I just want you to know, if you ever want to come over to my family, we'd love to have you. I see the problems that you're having in your relationship. Just know that I'm praying for you. I know how tests are hard for you, and I've been praying for you all week. I just want to give you this encouraging note, because I'm here with you, and I know you're going through a tough season. I know you're running on empty, but I just want you to know that I'm here. And if you break down, I'm going to be there as soon as I can to help you get back up. And it says, don't look at other people and don't assume that you're better than them. Because after all, it could be any of us. As we talked about, there's all these different burdens out there. There's all these different issues out there, things that are trying to trap us. It says the devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy, and he's going after every single one of us. So when we look at other people who've fallen, when we look at other people who are in tough situations, we can't say, well, I've been carrying my burden. I've been carrying my load. I know that I've been doing it right. Paul's warning us. He says, it could be any of us. You don't know when you're going to break down. You don't know when something's going to come in your way. You don't know when someone's going to die. You don't know when the worst moment of your life's going to hit, when a breakup's going to happen. You can't control that. But what you can control is how much you got in the tank. So let's be there for each other. And the last one is the verse 5. It says, for each one should carry their own load. And you read that and you say, okay, well, we're supposed to help each other, but I'm supposed to carry my own load. What does that mean? What he's saying is there's some things that only you are responsible for carrying. There's some things in your life, your purity, the walk with God that you have in your life, the thought life that you have, the way that you treat other people. There's certain things that only you can control. And so you need to carry that burden on your own. Everyone else can help you with other things, but you have to carry that load. And some of you, you're carrying a load way too heavy. You have way too high of expectations for yourself. Maybe it came from a parent, maybe it came from a friend, maybe it came from a sibling who you thought was so much better than you. And you have this burden on your shoulders and you're carrying it and you say, I'm just trying to be this perfect person. I'm just trying to be like them. I'm just trying to live up to the expectations. And God's saying, that's not for you to carry. It's not your burden. My burden is light. Why is my burden light? Because my burden is full of love. He says, my burden is full of purpose. You're going to understand when it fits right. You're going to understand when you have the perfect yoke in your life. God says, that's the purpose for you. The reason why it's light is not because there isn't a burden on your back. The reason why it's light is because all of a sudden you look around and you start to see your purpose in this world. You start to see your friends as people who need to know the love that Jesus has shown you. You start to see this world as a place where you can jump in and be a part of it and say, I'm not going to just be a spectator. I'm going to be involved in people's lives. I'm going to care for them. This fits perfect, God. I know it's not easy, but you say it'll be easy. I know it's not actually light, but you say it's light because it's filled with your love. It's filled with your grace. It's filled with your mercy, and I'm going to follow after that.